It's the 4th of July weekend, Independence weekend, and so many people are out partying and being with family and friends and certainly having hot dogs and whatever else goes with the holiday celebration. So, as we gather on this Sunday, we will be reading from the Gospel of Luke, of course, and just know that the Episcopal and the Roman Catholic and the Common Lectionary have two readings that are the same this weekend. So the gospel and the epistle are the same for all three of those lectionaries. And then you have a different one for the first reading. The common lectionary is from the Elisha story. So in the gospel text, we are reading that Jesus is sending out others. So others obviously means somebody other than the 12 that he's already picked to be his disciples who are going to be passing on the mission and message of Jesus. And so the 70 are told to go in all simplicity. Don't take anything extra. Just go with what you have on and go. You don't take an extra coat. You don't take extra sandals. You don't even take food. You are going on a mission, and the expectation is when you are accepted at somebody's home, they will feed you, they will house you, they will take care of you because you are there on behalf of God. Sometimes you're going to run into acceptance and sometimes you're going to have absolute rejection. If you're having rejection, sometimes it's not worth wasting your time there. You move on. And Jesus says, and when you do, you just shake the dust from your feet and move on to another area because you're there to prepare the way for Jesus. The way for Jesus is to get to Jerusalem. We know that he needs to get to Jerusalem. We know what the reason is. But he sends these 70s out, the 70 out. Now, I don't know if it's because 70 was the number that Moses had when he picked the elders. We don't really know. And in some gospel text, it says 70, and sometimes it says 72. When you hear this story, they come back all excited because not only were they accepted most of the time, but they were able to do great things. They were able to actually relieve tension in the home. If there was tension, they were able to do miracles in the name of Jesus. And so they were so on a high when they returned to say, all of this happened. And Jesus says, wait a minute, folks. All of that is really good. And yes, you were sent to prepare the way for me. But you need to know that what's important is to be having your name written in the book of life, in the book that God keeps of what's important and who's important. And so they kind of came back so excited, and he put a little bit of the kibosh on it that it's really important to have your name in the book of life. So yes, we have people other than the ordained, the other than the special people that are titled, that go out and they pass the word on for other people so that they could follow in the footsteps of Jesus. But in that first reading, I love the first reading because, well, if you've paid attention, that whole Elijah series, I just love the stories that are in that. I love all the Old Testament stories, and I know they say so much more to us as the years go by because we learn to, instead of just taking everything at face value of the literal interpretation, we move on to the next levels of interpretation and say, what does this say about me? It's not just a story to remember. So in the Elisha cycle, we have a little girl, a young girl, a slave girl of one of the Roman important people. And she sees that her master is having problems. And she says, there's a prophet. Maybe you should go see the prophet because it's told that the prophet can heal a lot of people. He can do miracles. And maybe it would be worth your while to just go and see that prophet. His name is Elisha. And so her master, named Naaman, decides that he's going to make the trip. And of course, he makes the trip. He's got the chariots and he's got all the extra people making sure he gets to the right location. And he gets to the location, knocks, and he's greeted by not Elisha, but somebody else. And as he starts to tell his story, he's waiting for Elisha to come out because he's just sure that the prophet wants to see him because after all, he's so important. Look at me. I have my chariots. I have all my stuff. And the other person that comes and greets him at the door says, the prophet says you go down to the Jordan and you dip yourself in there 7 times. Well, I want to tell you, Naaman is really incensed. He's like, I'm so important, and the prophet can't even come out and talk to me in person, and he wants me to go down to the dirty Jordan and dunk in the water. He's pretty upset by the fact that he's not noted for how important he is. And the people who are with him say, well, what's to lose? Why not give it a try? You actually came this far because you believed what the slave girl said, that there is something that could be done to help you, and maybe this prophet could do it. So you had some kind of belief there. Now, can we move to the next step and have some trust and actually implement what is being told to you, what you should do? And so, because of the other people and because of the slave girl, Naaman does. He goes down, and I'll bet you when he went down to the Jordan, it's not always looking very clean. To dip himself 7 times, somehow he had trust. He had the belief first, but then he had the trust. He dipped once, probably not so happy about that. And the second time and the third time, up to 7 times. And he gets clean, like having skin of a youngster. Why do they put that in that story? What would the skin of the youngster look like? Well, after all, he was one of the army people. He would have fought many fights. He would have had lots of scars and lots of marks on his skin that would have been there because of who he was and how he climbed up the ladder of success to be hobnobbing with the Pharaoh, with whoever, and not only the Pharaoh, but the king who was in charge at that time. And so he dips himself 7 times into the Jordan. Now, he's already put an objection in. We have other cleaner rivers over there. Why do I have to go to the Jordan? But he does. He takes the word on somebody else. The young girl, who is the slave girl of his wife, says, I hear that there is a prophet, and the prophet is in town, and you can go see Elisha, and he will help you out. And so he follows the advice of somebody else. You know, in life, we always need to follow some suggestions from people who are older than us, and sometimes people who are younger than us. I mean, anybody who's over a certain age knows if you want to learn something about the computer, ask the young people. If you want a wise answer to something that you're starting to try to do, maybe you should ask an older person who has had life experience. And so in this instance, in both stories, you have people going out because they were told to, and then coming back happy. Naaman gets healed. The 70 come back because they were able to do all these wonderful and glorious things. And it matters that we are noted in the book of life, the book that God keeps. And so there's lessons to be learned when we go out to talk about Jesus. It's not a bad idea to go with somebody else. For one reason, you need to know that you can't be attacked because somebody's going to say, oh, they said this or they did that. You have a second person there. You know, it takes 2 always to convict, to actually make a complaint about somebody. So 2, you go by 2s. And then you listen to other people who have life lessons. And whether or not it's a life lesson of a little girl who's a slave girl to your wife, you followed through because somewhere in that heart of yours, whether you worship God at all, you just know that there's some higher authority in charge of everything. It's not you. It's not you. And so, as we think about Naaman and following the advice of a little girl, and then following into the dirty Jordan, dipping himself 7 times and getting completely healed with all new skin, no scars, no scars. And you think of the 70 who went out, we know that we can't do the job alone. Anybody who thinks they can do anything alone is wrong. You don't even have joy alone. If everything's going your way, it's not joyful unless you have someone to share it with. So that's why we have community. That's why we have worship times and gatherings in community. So we gather together. So go in peace and remember gathering is important.